So we'll continue our exploration of spaciousness. Last week I talked a bit more about thoughts and how to work with thoughts as a way to open up the mind when it gets kind of tight around our beliefs and our judgments and so forth. Tonight I'd like to talk about what I call the heart space. It's a particular kind of aspect of the space of awareness that is embodied, and it has a particular flavor and is really quite useful, and it isn't necessarily what opens up for people with just meditation, unless in some way you're invited there. So I'll introduce it to you with a little exercise that many of you have been here for a long time know, but I just find it very, very useful for giving you a concrete experience of what I'm talking about, because words just don't quite get it. So if you take your hands and you just kind of put them about a half an inch apart, feel what that is like between the hands, right between the palms. You can move it a little bit like this. Sometimes helps you to feel that a little better. What I'm looking for is the sensation right in the center of your palms of something like a flow, something like a gravitational pull, something like an exchange happening between the hands, even though there's no touch. You know, if you touch them together, it has that pressured feeling. But when they're apart, and sometimes you have to hold them apart for a little while until you can see this subtle sensation, like an electric current or something passing between the hands. You can also kind of play with it a little like this. There's something about that kind of oscillating. You can begin to even feel like you can roll a kind of ball there. We're just activating the palms is all we're doing here right now. And you can also expand, see if I can keep it in the camera, expand it and feel like you can maintain that connection over a distance. You can bring it back together. So it's like that current, once there's the intentionality there to meet the other hand, it kind of stays. So this is just a way to kind of wake up a certain energy point in your hands. Now, and you also can help sometimes still wiggle the fingers. It just keeps everything kind of loose, so you're not getting too, you kind of have a little bit of, I don't, what's the word I'm looking for? A little bit of tone in the palms. So they're not completely like bent, and they're not out in a really unnatural way, but there's just a little tone there. Now you bring them up to your head by your ears. This is where it gets a little crazy, a little nuts, but it actually works. And see if you can actually feel that current between your palms in some way passing through your head, and it can help to maybe rotate a little bit. It's very subtle. And even if you can't feel anything, just pretend. Just imagine, so to speak. Just imagine. And what I want you to do with your palms is to lock into, sort of like a mouse. You're going to click and drag here. So you're locked into that sense of who you are being behind the eyes in the head, which is the most common way I think the people in this culture experience where they are in the body, somewhere behind their eyes in their head. You can just kind of click on that, lock into that, and then drag it down slowly. You have to move very slowly with this. It doesn't come down quickly. So you're bringing the hands down and just pointing them at your heart. Good. The camera can just get a little bit of sense from the top fingers where my hands are. You're not touching your sternum or your heart. You're several inches away, but the palms are focused right on the center of the chest at the heart. And as you're doing this, imagine, and you can do it more than once if you need to, imagine or feel that you can actually pull that sense of energy in your head that's gathered around who you think you are in your thoughts down to your heart. And just hold your hands there and invite the heart to awaken. Invite the heart intelligence to awaken. And let an energy in your head just kind of melt down. I think of it as like pouring maple syrup over your head. It's about that viscosity. It's about that speed at which it comes down. And the palms are just creating a kind of a magnetic attraction for that energy to come down more to the heart. Now we're working with the heart tonight, but you could also lower them a little more, and you can just try that now. Lower them more and point them at the belly. It's a little different feeling, letting the energy come clear down to the belly. There's a kind of stability to it. But let's come back up to the heart. Hold it there at the heart. If anytime you get tired of doing this, if your hands get tired, go ahead and set them down for a little while. It's fine. But if you set them down, just continue to feel something active here. Something has been activated. You can also, another way to kind of do it is to put your palm on your chest and just create a circle like this. Just invites that area to open. And you do it very softly, very tenderly. And you might feel, as the energy kind of happens there, something very subtle energy like buoyancy. Something as subtle as the static electricity on a balloon. I keep using that as a metaphor for how subtle it is. It begins to happen in the heart, like a radiance right from the center of the heart. And just touching the sternum this way can awaken it, or this kind of energy connection through the palms. Experiment with that. Now bear with me. You'll feel as you begin to get some sense of the heart as a energetic space, that there is kind of an opening toward the front. Opening toward the front. And most people have experienced this if you've ever been in love, if you've ever felt affection for another being, human or animal or plant or anything, really. There's a kind of a way that the heart just kind of opens out the front in a kind of a connection with that being. It comes very naturally to people who are in love. It comes very naturally between you and a child. It can come very naturally between you and your animal. So we may all have experienced that. So just right now, feel that space of opening, which is affection, kind of goes forward. I find it so nice to know that it's accessible through intentionality and through working a bit with energy the way that we are, which is really our own palms, our own hands, as expression of our feeling and our intentionality. That this area starts to feel more open. It starts to feel a kind of a buoyancy and an energy and life to it, just through this. And if you're not feeling that right now, again, don't get on your case. No, you don't have to go to I'm a failure. This can take some practice. This can take some doing to begin to activate this. And if you've had a big loss recently, there could be just like a stone there, so to speak, or other things can kind of interfere. But I find that even then you can in some way invite this to open. I also kind of like, if I can do this up a little higher, this kind of thing over my heart, to kind of draw it out a little bit. So there's the frontal energy of the heart, the frontal space. And what I want you now to do is to go into the center of the heart. And then imagine that you can relax back in the heart, like the heart can relax back to the sternum, and you can actually go in your attention into the back of the heart. Feel that. It feels a little different than affection, which tends to pull you kind of forward in the heart. This kind of relaxes you back, and my hands right now are kind of imitating the shoulder blades as they relax right behind the chest and the heart. So you go back to the back of the heart. And then I invite you to notice there's another opening out the back of the heart. So this way, out the back of the heart. See if you can feel that, or just invite that. Obviously, we can't use the hands very well anymore because they're in the front better than they're in the back. Maybe some of you do yoga, you can get those palms back there, but I can't anymore. So, but you can begin to feel that, and it can help to say, twist your body just a little bit, or move the shoulders just slightly to feel that. It's a kind of a radiance backwards. It's not something we do very often. In fact, most people are completely ignorant of it. And then what I would invite you to do is to move back through that, out the back of your body. Just to feel what it's like in that space behind you. Now, don't be surprised there's no sensation. This is beyond sensation. And it takes us to a place that's kind of beyond words as well. But feel what it's like with your intention to move back through that opening of the heart behind the body. See what it feels like. In a certain level, on the level of form, there's absolutely nothing there. Once you get past the skin sensation, there's really nothing there. And yet, there's a space. And I'm not going to say much more about it. I'm going to ask people when we get to the discussion part of the class to say how they experience this, what they notice here. So right now you can notice, if you had to put a word to what this is like, what would it be? The back of the heart and the opening out the back of the heart. So what I'm going to suggest, and you can practice it this week, is that by opening this heart space as we have tonight, you can actually walk through your world with it and see what that feels like. To walk through your world with the heart space open. To, say, meet someone, talk to them, and continue to be conscious of this. And notice perhaps this kind of radiance forward that comes from the heart, where there's affection. This is really good to practice with your animals because they're not self-conscious at all. You don't have to worry about what they think of you. So if you have an animal at home, And some people will think of this as just like what we do when we do loving kindness. We send a radiant wish to another being. And that's completely okay, because that is in fact what loving kindness is trying to do. It's trying to open this heart space. It's trying to create this experience of radiance that we're doing here directly without the words that are often used in loving kindness, which direct the intentionality in some way. We're just doing it purely in an embodied way. And then also experience what it's like to walk through the world with the back of the heart open. What that feels like, what that suggests, and how that shifts consciousness. Just before I stop, I want to point out another couple of things. Is that while you're in the back of the heart, before you go out of the body, so to speak, back behind, just where you're resting kind of your attention back, very, up against the spine kind of thing. You might also just take a moment to go up the back of the spine and up over the head. Just to feel how there's a kind of a possibility of movement up that way from the back of the heart. You can also experience what it's like to take that like energy line, if I can use that word, down the spine to the sacrum. And from the sacrum, off the sacrum, down into the earth. This can be done standing as well, of course. And that sacrum still tethers to the earth when you're standing, just as much as it does when you're sitting. It might seem, like when you're sitting, it's more natural, but I actually think that you can begin to discover how the sacrum, that line down the back from the heart, it tethers to the earth. And we're kind of suspended between heaven and earth, so to speak, in this way, energetically. So I'm introducing the kind of energetic aspect of noticing space. It's the energetic aspect and the way that it's really embodied. The space of thoughts, I find, is less embodied. I can notice thoughts arising in a space, but it doesn't quite have the same embodiment for me as this heart space. It's why I offer it, because I actually think that in some ways this is a more grounded way to be spacious, more grounded and warmer than just the kind of noticing thoughts that can happen in a mindfulness practice of thinking. All right, so I'm going to close the teaching here and open it up to you, and we can hear what you noticed.